Hello. Thank you for coming to tonight's GR Reads program. If you're not familiar with GR Reads, it's our adult summer reading program where we pick 10 books and then plan programming inspired by those books. Last year we picked Between the World and Me, and we did a panel discussion called Raising Strong Black Men. When we decided to do Phoebe Robinson's You Can't Touch My Hair, we wanted to flip it over, give the girls their fair share, and actually I think this one's going to be even better. You didn't have to read the book to know anything about the panel. We're not going to do a book report or dissect it. We're just going to listen to these women who are wonderful community leaders, and they're going to teach us their experiences and relate with everything that you might be going through as well. I want to thank the Grand Rapids Public Library Foundation. Without their support, we couldn't offer these programs. They fully support our programs, so we can offer them free to the public. I also want to thank WIT TV and WGVU. Off to the side, we have a book list, Black women authors who write children's books. A bunch of the books have been picked. You're welcome to check those out before you leave, and be inspired to maybe do a book club with your daughter, your granddaughter, your niece, or just your friend. I'm not going to spend too much time on these intros. There are sheets on the side that tell more about these women. I just want to kind of jump right into the conversation. I think we could probably go all night, and you don't want to hear me rambling anymore. We have Nadia Brigham, who's here from W.K. Kellogg Foundation. We have Christian Grant, who's the GRPS school board member and a business owner. And then we have Rebecca Diffin, who's with the YWCA. Your moderator tonight is our city clerk, Darlene O'Neill. She's worked for the city for 30 years in multiple roles, and we finally got her in the library. So I'm going to turn it over to her. Thank you for coming.
Ooh. Good evening, good evening, good evening. This is a pretty serious topic, wouldn't you say? All right, so I'm going to try and keep it a little light. We are going to get a little serious. We are going to ask you a few questions, or at least give you an opportunity to ask us questions. But we're looking for a healthy conversation here tonight, okay? But before we get started, I like to take a moment of silence. Everybody's been watching the news, and we know what's been going on in Charlottesville. And it's sad, it's heart-wrenching, it's deep, it's hurtful, it's many things. But right now, I just want to take a moment. I want all of us to take a moment just to think about what's going on there and lift up the city and the state and the family of Heather Hare. She lost her life for the sake of others. So let's just take a moment of silence. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. We have 3 strong, beautiful Black women on this panel. And it is a pleasure and an honor to be your moderator tonight. So let's just ask you a few questions. I'd like to start off asking them, how did they become strong women? We all have a story. We all have a journey. But I like each panelist to speak about their journey to become a strong Black woman. So we'll start with you, Rebecca.
I don't think I would consider myself a strong Black woman 10 years ago or 20 years ago. I did not grow up having or feeling like I had a voice. I grew up very shy, very quiet, didn't want people to look at me, very embarrassed. And as I grew up, there was something in me that something in me told me you do have a voice. And I work at the YWCA. Our mission is empowering women, eliminating racism. And I've been there 7 years, and it wasn't until 7 years ago, really, that I started to develop that voice and know that as a person of color, I have something to say, and there's people who are there to listen. And really having children, this little one right here, is what really kicked it into high gear for me, because doing what I do and feeling the way I feel is because of my children, and I want to be strong for them.
Thank you.
I would say for me, I am so influenced by my community, by the people who support me. So I was raised around a lot of love, which manifested as high expectations. But I think when you're raised with love and knowing that people support you, whether you succeed or whether you fail, it really pushes you to be strong. So I would say that's really my biggest influence, and in realizing that I can be quote unquote strong today, whatever that means to me, and tomorrow I might not feel the same way, and that doesn't take anything away from me, and that's really been a learning process.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I would say that growing up in America, you don't have any choice but to be strong as a black woman. I would say that my mother and my father and my grandmother, they didn't shelter me from life. And so you learned a lot from watching the strong women in your family be strong, living through difficulties of this life and teaching you how to forgive and be graceful to people and treat people how you want to be treated, taught me that I had purpose, and that I was loved, and that I could withstand no matter what came my way. And I would say early on in my development, I learned to develop my own story and not just live off the stories of my parents and my grandparents.
All right, good point. All right. I like to take a quick poll. I like to see who's in the audience by way of age. So if you are between the ages of 20 and 30, please raise your hand. Okay. Okay. If you are between the ages of 31 and 40, please raise your hand. Okay. And if you are, well, let me be careful here. Okay, all right. Between the ages of 41 and 50, please raise your hand. All right. And how about 51 plus? And the reason why I took this poll, I think it's important to know who's in the audience. And it helps us to understand the generation that you came from, which brings me to my next question for the panelists. So I'm inclined to believe that if I spoke with someone that is 60, 65, or 70, they may say being a strong woman through my generation or at my time or when I was in my 20s and 30s raising my children looked like X, okay? And we have 3 beautiful young professionals, and they are strong within their own right, but being strong may look a little different, maybe. But I'd like to ask the panelists, do you think, given today's challenges, do you think being strong today look much differently than being strong 20, 30, or 40 years ago? Are we facing the same challenges as black women or not? Have we made strides over the years? And being strong today looks a little differently than in the past? or is it about the same? So I'd just like to get your opinion. So we'll start with middle. Kristen.
I would say I feel a little bit middle of the road for this, because I would say that my generation may not fully, a lot of people that I know weren't fully taught that things were a lot different in the 50s and the 60s, that there were black families, black men and women that were together and raising their kids, and then some things happened systematically that kind of weakened the black family in America. So on that end, I would say it doesn't look the same. But I also think as a black woman, I do face a lot of the things that black women 30 years ago had to face. I unfortunately don't think we have made as much progress as we should have.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I would say, I think up until maybe a couple of weeks ago, I would have said, yeah, we face the same things that women who are older than us faced. But I had an opportunity a couple weeks ago to do a Southern tour, and we went to Little Rock, then we went to Memphis, we went throughout Mississippi, and then New Orleans. And I got to experience and go to the places that the most evil atrocities had taken place against black lives, black bodies. What was consistent was the story, the narrative always started with black men. A black man was doing something, whether it was Medgar Evers, he was, out trying to save and running through, and, or Emmett Till and Mr. Right, and I got the feeling like, where are the black women? Where are they? And we got the chance to talk to the surviving black women, because many of the men are dead, were killed. And those women told us about how they gathered the young girls in their homes, how they set up their living rooms and their bedrooms with guns at each window to protect the family when the male went out or was killed, how they themselves were at the hands of the Klan, not just the Klan, but the police officers and the National Guard, and took beatings trying to save their sons or their husbands. And there were all these black women that were behind all of this movement. From that standpoint, I would say, doggone, no, we got it much easier. What hasn't changed, though, is the fact that we still start with black men in the story. So when you hear about Black Lives Matter, you think D-Ray somebody. There were 3 black sisters who started Black Lives Matter. When you hear about any part of current or past movements, we tend to minimize the role of black women when it has always been, since the time we were taken from the African shores and brought here, there's always been black women who have held our families together by choice, and not necessarily because black men didn't want to, but we were left. We took our power where we could find our power to try to maintain our families and keep them safe and teach them the ways of navigating this world. I would say that hasn't changed as we replace Jim Crow and with mass incarceration, that there are blocks and whole communities of black women who are holding it down. And we remain there, and that part of the story is often not told, and we're often minimized for being somebody's baby's mama, and not as the one who remained to try to make sure that the children are taken care of, but also to try to make sure that the men are taken care of.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Becky?
I don't know that I could add too much more to what these ladies have said. That's right on. I just have, in my own personal family, in comparing myself today to, like my grandmother, I was born in North Carolina, she's very Southern, and I think that her strength, she had a very quiet, like you're talking about, very quiet strength, and you are strong because you are this man's wife. And me today, I'm not as quiet as my grandmother is, I think I would say.
Okay, all right. Great responses. So we did a comparison of the past, all right? So let's take a quick snapshot into the future. So moving forward, because we have professional women and you guys have children, and they're younger, okay? But you have to raise them, right? So what key components, and I know we can't look in the future, but we're going to try just for a moment here, but what key components do you feel that you have to make sure is embedded in your daughters? And for grandmothers that are helping our younger mothers bring up our girls, grandmothers, you think about what key components or elements do you believe or feel should be embedded in our young girls growing up? Because, we're facing an awful lot in our society today. We can't predict the future. We can't, but, we're going to try our best. But what things do you feel are important to make sure is embedded in your daughters? So I will start with you, Nadia.
So I have two daughters. I have younger and older kids, so it's a long story. But our son is 25, and then we have an 18-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old daughter who's here with us today. And I would say for my girls, foundationally, I want them to know that they are born whole, that nobody can make them whole, nobody has to add to them. God did a complete job when he made them. They are good.
All right.
And that anything that's added to them just enhances their life, but that they're not partial or somehow less than if they don't have, right? So that's the general piece. More particularly, I want them to, I'm hoping that I'm living my life in a way that they can emulate. And even around the places where I make mistakes or I'm not perfect, because no one is, that they can learn from my mistakes and not follow those same things. Even more granular than that, I want them to love their kinky hair. I want them to love whether they have curves or they're thin, they're light or they're dark. I want them to love everything about them, and I want them to take their standards of beauty from what God has given them, not from outside of themselves. So their hair doesn't have to be good, whatever that is. Their eyes don't have to be, she got those pretty eyes. They don't have to be that. I want them to know that their kinky hair, their thick lips, their round figures are just perfect, just the way God made them.
All right, great answer. All right. We can do that. Okay.
I would say the exact same thing. I'd have a daughter and 2 young boys, and I tried to let all 3 of them know how same thing, they've been created perfectly. And since she was little, we colored together, and I remember coloring Cinderella with dark skin, and she'd tell me, "Mommy, Cinderella's not brown." And I've been telling her since she was little, I like the brown skin. I think the brown skin is beautiful, and your hair is beautiful. And I know it's coming because she goes to a school where there's not as many students of color as her. And I know it's coming, the questions and the hair and your hair. She's already gotten, your hair is frizzy. And I just have to hold on to, I hope that me putting this positivity into her since before she started school is going to be in there somewhere, and that she internalizes that, so that way when the comments do come up, it's easier for her to brush it off and say, I know I'm beautiful. I've been told that I'm beautiful, and just have a better sense of self.
Right? So making sure that she has strong self-esteem, great, high self-esteem is important. Wonderful. Kristen.
For me, there
there are two things for my daughter. One, that I am learning myself as we speak is I realized through my teenage years, through my 20s, I was so focused on just working hard, just proving that no one could work harder than me, proving my worth, really. So trying to make up for mistakes that I made a long time ago and still trying to prove that that doesn't define me. And so one thing I want my daughter to understand is that you forgive yourself, we love you, you move on. And yes, we work hard, but we also enjoy life. I see so many Black women not enjoying life, and that makes me sad. That makes me really sad because you look around and you see other people enjoying their life, and I just decided, you know what, I'm going to work hard, but I'm going to live hard too. Right. So that's one thing. The other thing is that I want my daughter to be strategic in her life, and that's something that's really important to me that I talk about a lot. I look at everything through the lens and language of business. I'm an entrepreneur, and what I realize is that there is a lot of strategy that goes into holding people of color back. There is a lot of planning that goes into that, and we have to be strategic to understand that those systems exist, but that they don't have to determine our outcome. And so I want her to just understand how to look at things and see them, but understand how to strategize through them, past them. And we exert so much energy, but if it's not strategic, we're not going anywhere. And we have to put those things in place for our children, talking about career decisions and you know, thinking about how are we laying a foundation. One reason why it's so hard for us to be strategic is because, like Nadia said, we're just trying to hold down the fort. There's no strategy in just trying to hold down the fort. Catch that water that's dripping, make sure the cold air is not coming in. You can't be strategic. So I've always just worked really hard to lay down a foundation so that she can be strategic. I did that. Now you can really make a plan, and I want us to be able to do that so that our generations are building on top of each other instead of just being a straight line and we're all doing the same thing generation after generation.
Said a mouthful. You have all said a mouthful. But let me touch on something, Kristen, that you just talked about. Working hard. Always feeling the need to prove. Working hard. We're the first one to get to work. We're the last one to leave. We skip our lunch hour just to kind of get it in. Oh, we're going to make that deadline come heck and high water. We're going to do it. We're working hard. Then we fail to take care of ourselves, right? Because we're so hard working to prove, as opposed to really putting that energy inside. But here's the question. What does taking care of yourself look like? Talk about the boundaries. Talk about the limits. Talk about I want you to talk about what taking care of yourself look like. So I'm starting, it's your turn, isn't it, Rebecca?
Mentally, for taking care of myself, I tried to stay off of social media, away from the news, TV, and all of that, and put my energy into my children.
Well, you don't know what's going on if you go off social media, right? I'm just kidding. Just lighten it up.
Right, especially given the climate right now, today. I've just found, working at the YWCA, there's so much that I deal with already, with domestic violence and sexual assault. Anything else that's added to that by checking Facebook, what are people saying, what are friends saying, it gets to be too much, and so I force myself to turn off the phone, and two, stepping away from work and closing myself off. I've been closing myself off from people who are just not empowering for me to be around. Closing, if it's not a healthy relationship, if it's not someone who is giving anything to me that's helping me grow, I'm comfortable to walk away from that relationship and find new ones. So that's what I try to do.
Good for you. Good for you. Okay.
For me, over the past year, I've been really intentional about how I'm going to take care of myself, and I've done that in some really practical ways. Going for a monthly massage, and that's something that I would have felt like it's not in the budget. I don't, I can't do this, but being 29 and feeling your body just like knotted up and not even realizing how much stress you're under. Or I used to have a habit of every time I traveled, I felt guilty, so I would find work to do. Like I would find somebody to meet with, so I could say, okay, now I qualify for a vacation now, or
that's the definition of a workaholic, right?
But I literally felt like there had to be validation to my traveling. One thing that I've just put into practice is meditating every morning. Writing out daily affirmations about myself and the life that I want to see. And no matter how silly it feels, saying it out loud every day, and then taking 10 minutes to sit down, light a favorite candle, and meditate. And that's so counter to, I won't say my family, because I would wake up to my mother praying every morning. But my peers, say like, I'm going to meditate. It's like, what you into? What you doing? And I think that we have to be willing to be like, this is what I need. I can tell when I haven't done it. I can tell when I missed a morning of meditating. Just being still. And so those are the things that I've put into practice.
All right. Wonderful. Nadia.
So the things that I'm going to do. No, I'm just joking. I think when my husband and I love to travel, and I only get to be two people when I travel. When I'm at home, I'm mama, sister, daughter, granddaughter, friends, student, employee, mama. And when we travel, I'm just Nadia and his wife. Although our last vacation, I was just Nadia, and it was awesome. And he had fun too, didn't he? So trying to really give myself a break from all the roles that I play and shutting myself off from the world. Like, I meet people all the time who feel guilty for, like, doing nothing. That is not my testimony. I can shut off the world. I don't have to say a word all day. I can sit in my room by myself and enjoy the blue wall. Like, it is just fine with my soul. But I don't have enough of that. And so I have to, part of it is the season of life, but the other part is the intentionality of really trying to make sure that I get it done. The other thing I like to do is I love to dance. I ain't got to be a good dancer. That is not the prerequisite.
Watch out. Watch out. Ballroom, Chicago Star.
I might not be able to do any of that. That is not. The point is to be one with your body and free, to move your body to music and not care who's watching. Because, like, where else can you do that except for on the dance floor?
Right.
Right? Like, you can just be free. So I try to find places of freedom and just dance, even if I got to dance by myself. I dance in my room. I dance in the shower. I dance in the grocery store, especially when my kids are around because it's fun to embarrass them. I'll dance at a club. I'll dance in church. You see me dancing all the time. Those folks who go to church with me in this, I will dance because I think it's just a way of being free with your body.
Right.
And I don't think that black women have been taught how to relax.
Right.
We haven't. Mm-hmm. We just work.
Yep. Okay, how many of you, raise your hand, how many of you want to see Nadia dance? All right now. So before our discussion here, we had an opportunity to just touch on a couple of things, and in the conversation about how do you take care of yourself, we talked about it's how important it is to have a support system. You just can't do it by yourself, right? So sometimes in our quest to be independent. I can do it all by myself. I don't need nobody. I'm certainly not going to share. I don't want nobody in my business. Oh, if I need some help, I'm considered weak. But really, you're not weak. You need help, and it's okay, because reaching out and asking for help, that has nothing to do with independence. Independence, to me, is a frame of mind, number one, your desire to do things on your own. But sometimes we fall short, right? And it's okay. So I think we have to learn not to be so hard on ourselves in our quest for independence, but, we got to be smart with it. But we're working. Can we talk a little bit, and I'm tossing this question out to all three of you, not in any particular order, and all three of you do not have to answer, particularly if one answers, you go, yeah, you know what she said, and that's good. But can we talk a little bit about why we are almost conditioned not to ask for help, and having help is a part of the support system? Why don't we do that enough as Black women?
Like I said, I look at everything through a business lens. It's just how I've been conditioned. So the analogy that I use is, as a small business owner, you answer the phone, you're the secretary. You clean the bathroom because you're the janitor. You stock the shelves because you're the person who does that as well. You're everything. And I will say that Black women that I have known have had to be everything. And their circle is also being everything where they are. So it's not necessarily that we don't want to ask for help sometimes. It's more out of a respect. I can't call so-and-so because I know what she's dealing with over there. And but then transition to a small business owner going to a big company, and they're like, oh, we have an advertising department. We have a marketing department. Oh, I don't do that because this is what they do. And you're able to flow so much more efficiently. And so sometimes I think it's based on resources. Mm-hmm. We are used to making do with not enough resources. If you've ever gone to a company where you're hired in and you have a budget. I remember the first time I had a real budget with the company. Now, I was used to putting on big events. We got $200 and my cousin was going to cook these wings. And it would come off amazing. But then I would go somewhere and they say, well, yeah, you have $10,000 for that event. I'm like, $10,000? We're about to have this at the White House. It's different. We've had to make do with less, and we've done it, but then we're stuck in that frame of mind.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Ladies, you want to add to her?
I'll just add that what you had alluded to, that we're seen, if we're to ask for help, we're seen as weak. So if I'm in a new position and I don't understand the way that this is working, if I ask for help, then that's someone behind me saying, I knew she couldn't do it. We should have gone with so-and-so and so-and-so. So I want to say that plays into not wanting to ask for help because I can do this on my own. I don't want you to think that I can't or that I'm weak.
Okay, so it's a concern what others may think about you as well. Okay.
I also think that we're taught to, from at least I was taught, you got to be twice as good to get it done. And if I ask for help, then I might not be twice as good. So in order to, be twice as good, I can't ask for help. Although, I'm growing out of that. So I'm asking for help. I need somebody to come help me clean the toilets. I need somebody to... Today I had a whole dance party in my office, and my colleagues are here with me tonight. On my office, because I really do like music, there's this picture of me in front of some turntables that says DJ Queen Nadia. Because one day that's on my bucket list, I'm going to do that. But I had a whole dance party. I invited her in, and I gave her whatever proposals she wanted to take. You get to take proposals, help me write these up so that I can get this done. I think you have to ask for help. I think this whole notion, and if I ask you for help, I really do need help.
Right.
it might take me a minute to get there, but if I don't need help, I'm going to say, like, I don't really need help. I'm good, but I will ask if I need it.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. Wonderful. So in addition to, this is just my comment, in addition to asking for help, we also need to give ourselves permission to take a break, to rest, and in my definition of being resilient is not based on how I can just keep on going. Oh, I'm going like an Energizer bunny. I'm resilient. I'm just going. No, being resilient is predicated on your ability to rest, to take a break, to revive yourself, to replenish. Then you can come back. I'm going to rest, going to come back. Y'all see that robot? Rest, come back, rest. That's what it's about, okay? All right, now, so the support system, resources, networking, the ability to get into the right circles to network. Then you have these structures, right? And some of these structures are strategically built, maybe, to keep us out, maybe. Structural racism, perhaps. So can we go there, ladies? Can we go there? We're going to talk a little bit about structural racism. And Nadia, I would really like to start with you.
What's the question?
That's right. How about if we start off with a comment regarding structural racism and how it impacts African American women? Is that too broad of a question? You want me to narrow it down a little bit?
I'm going to go somewhere and you can stop me.
Okay.
All right. So I think the first acknowledgement has to be that there is racism. And then shortly after that, there has to be an admission and an acknowledgement that it is purposeful and intentional. That this structure, so in the last few days we've heard all sorts of commentary about, I can't believe that this is happening again. This is incredible. This is not American. I can't believe that we're here. And I'm here to say that this is as American as apple pie and baseball. That the system was designed to inflict incredible violence upon people of color, particularly Native Americans through genocidal policies and practices, and African Americans who were brought here to be slaves and build this country. Once we acknowledge that and understand understanding structural racism as one that's really about power and economics and patriarchy, right? And so because we're women, we have these intersections that are touching both, touching all class, gender, and race. And it plays out in our minds. It plays out in the narratives about who we are and who we aren't. It plays out on our bodies in horrific ways, you know, given you see this every day in the work that you do. And until we acknowledge that, the purposeful nature of it, then we can't begin to build the kinds of allies that we need to be able to change it, right? Because I'm also clear that the issue of race is not my issue. It's not the issue of people of color. This is an issue with white folk. Racism is their disease that they have to fix in order to transform this country. Once that happens, then we can build the alliances that we need. And I'll say a word about alliances. My colleague and I, who happens to be from this community, who's a white male, we do this training about cross-racial alliances. And we talk about the intersection of gender. And we're clear that I don't need a white ally to come to my dinner table. Don't. Me and my family have a good time all alone. And we have good food and everybody enjoys it. We need to be clear about what the purpose of an alliance is. It's not so we can have a good time. It's not so I can have an extra friend. I got plenty of friends. I'm good. You are my ally as a white person so that you can help change this system that continues to kill people who look like me. And until we get that, all right? Until we get that, we just singing Kumbaya.
All right. Okay. We'll go Kristen, and then we'll go Rebecca.
Structural racism absolutely exists, and I think that it affects Black women in every facet of our lives. There's no place that it doesn't touch. It touches our dating life. It touches us when we go to interview for a job. It touches us when we are in our children's schools, right? Because there are so many of us as mothers who walk into the school and feel like the student again, you know, when the secretary won't acknowledge you, when the other moms are making play dates and your child is tugging on your dress and the other mom is like, we'll see. You know, I can't count how many times that happened to me and my child, and you know, but your baby doesn't understand. You know, it touches so many areas, and one thing that I will say, as African Americans, we play into the structure, but nothing infuriates me more than when someone automatically goes to that. Well, let's talk about Black on Black violence. Let's talk about how Blacks don't support each other, or Black women do this and that to each other. That in itself is a strategic outcome of the structure. So those of us who are privy to that knowledge, who understand it, yes, we can go against the grain, we can be different, but that context, that conversation in itself is just an outcome that was designed. It's not the cause, it's not the beginning, it's the end. And I'm really tired of people talking about the end result. Let's talk about what's causing those things, the root. Mm-hmm. So as us, I want us to stop playing into that conversation. Stop giving life to that conversation. Stop jumping on threads and saying, that's really bad, but you want to know what my neighbor did? No, I don't. Because they are just a part of that structure, and if they knew how to get out, they would. And I think that is really a place that we can start controlling the conversation. Stop letting people deny or debate whether this system exists.
Very good. Thank you. Rebecca.
Just to touch on what Nadia was saying about the acknowledgement, I don't know how much people recognize just acknowledging, it sounds simple just to acknowledge that structural racism exists, that white privilege exists, that unintentional biases exist. I think that just the acknowledgement piece itself is overlooked, and how huge that is and would be if people were just simply say, yes, it exists. Now what do we do going further?
Can I add one thing to that?
Absolutely.
So one of the things we've been talking about as a team is how in the last few days since the weekend in Charlottesville, people have been so outraged around the extremism of hate, which is like the tip of the iceberg of structural racism, right? Sort of like, people with their Confederate flags, which, by the way, I saw a lot in the South, but I also see every day when I drive to Battle Creek to work. So this notion that everything that's extreme is like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that I'm not a skinhead, I don't have a Confederate flag, and all the contradictions in the fact that the Confederacy lost, and so if you're a real patriot, don't you carry the American flag? Help me understand that, but whatever. But there's this whole, Ryan and, McConnell need to call the president, and he needs to apologize, and he needs to understand, but they can't because they're part of the same ideology, but they're below the surface. It's the same structure. It's like you kill me slowly or you kill me quickly. The extremism kills me quickly, but if you're writing policies where people can't have health care and you're taking away seniors' food and kids don't have school, How is that different? You're still denying life.
Absolutely.
And so when I say the acknowledgement of structural racism, I'm talking about not only the ability for folks to be in the street and have more firepower than police and police be completely absent from the scene, but I'm also talking about the power of the pen to sentence my community to death, to sentence them to no food, to no health care, to no education, to centralized poverty. Right? All of that is part of the structural mass incarceration. Right? Let me tell you something that I learned when I was in the South. This is just a quick tidbit that was so interesting. I just think you guys might want to know. So, everybody knows the story of Emmett Till. 14-year-old boy from Chicago goes to Money, Mississippi to be with his great uncle, Mr. Jeremiah Wright, or no, Mr. Wright, I can't remember his first name. And so they went to the Bryant store, right, to get whatever. He supposedly whistled, blah, 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 whatever. You already know what happens at the end of that. The Bryant store. This is structural racism in play. The Bryant store. Now, you heard earlier this year that the woman recanted. Is anybody wondering why she's not going to jail? Because her nephew is the governor of Mississippi today.
Wow.
And that is how structural racism plays out. And that is true for a lot of the legislators that are in Mississippi. A lot of them are connected to these plantations that folk were born on even in the 70s and 80s. Some folk didn't even leave. Right? It's important to know, like, this isn't history. This is now.
Right.
This is right now. All the dog whistle policies where you can say that people from certain countries can't come here, but these aren't the countries who bombed us. Okay. Right? You can make all these deals. Like, this is real. And so back to that pyramid, this isn't acceptable. Nazism, KKK, that's not acceptable. But all these policies are. What our president just did is not only okay what's at the top, he just okayed everything at the bottom, too. Deny them food. We just had another terrorist attack in Barcelona today, and we were quick with it. America won't stand for that, But we will stand for acts of violence against our own people. That's structural. And we have got to wake up to that because it's dangerous. It's dangerous.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I just wanted to add really quickly.
Absolutely.
Everything that you just stated, each of those line items are also very profitable. And we don't acknowledge that, but the terror that we live every day. I remember the first time that somebody told me most African Americans are traumatized. They have PTSD. And I was like, I'm not traumatized. And then thinking through it, seeing people live through it, clenching my steering wheel when I see a police officer, and I've committed no crime ever. Seeing a baby pulled over or a grown man pulled over and praying for him like he's my brother. That is trauma, and it's profitable. Our trauma is profitable in this country, and that is the real terror to me.
Good point. Good point. Wow. Is it deep enough? Okay. All right. Yes. Powerful statements. So, picture this. I'm mad. I really want to say something to that other parent that just shut my child down. So my child is not being invited to the play date, and I'm mad about it. I really want to tell that parent off. I want to tell her where to go, tell her what to do, tell her how to do it. I got my neck moving. My voice is escalating, and but what she did was just wrong. Exclusion in why, right? So I'm going to stick it to her. I'm going to tell her about it. But maybe I better not. I'm going to control myself. I'm just going to, handle this with grace. I'm not going to say, chalk that up. That's okay. My baby has other friends. That's okay, right? But you're still mad. Okay, so part of what's going through your mind is these stereotypes. Because if I say something, I'm already labeled as the black, mad woman who doesn't know how to use any, real nice language. She'll cuss me out. She's a bully. She's ghetto. She's sassy. She's uppity. She's all of that, right? Just because she wants to have a conversation with the other parent to say, hey, do you realize what you just did? You just excluded my child, and why? I want to have this conversation, but I probably won't say it because of this stereotype that, is associated with black women. Okay, so here's my question, ladies. Here's my question. So can you tell us about a time that you were labeled with a negative stereotype, and how did you handle it? I'm going to start with Rebecca.
Almost that exact same example.
Say what? Say it in song. I'll believe you. No, tell us about it.
But only in a work setting. And I was talking passionately about something that I felt passionately about, and a person made the comment to me jokingly, oh, don't get all angry black women on me. And I've heard it enough to where I heard it, and it just went right over me, and I did not address it in that moment. I regret that I didn't address it in that moment. But it's just something that I've heard so much that it washed over me, and I didn't even take a note to call the person out on it. That particular person, though, because this person was aware of what they said, weeks later came to me and said, do you know, I said something to you, and I want to apologize for saying that. And that person's apology to me shook my whole world. I have never gotten an apology like that for being called out for something like that. Any microaggression that's happened, no one has ever checked themselves and come back and apologize to me. So even though that happened, the apologies that came later, I almost didn't know how to deal with it. I went home, I talked to my husband. I told him I don't know how to deal with how the person who apologized to me. So, I don't. The acting of itself, I don't know if I was desensitized to it, but the apology that came later was even bigger than the actual comment that the person made.
Okay, all right, Kristen.
There's a story that I share with students when I go visit schools and talk to them, and I'll just give the short version. But I was a student at Michigan State. It was my freshman year. And I had a teacher who we actually brought in from Turkey. So when I initially got to Michigan State, I unknowingly applied to honors college. And so over orientation weekend, I graduated from Montessori. So over orientation weekend, I met all of these wonderful students who looked like me. And I was so excited to go to school with students who looked like me. And I remember we were walking on campus, and I had to go this way, and everybody else went the other way. And I said, where are you guys going? Where are you guys going? They were like, oh, yeah, we're not going there. And so when I got there, nobody looked like me. And I remember saying, oh, it must be a mistake. Put me in regular poli-sci. And the lady refused. She refused. She said, you know what? If you leave this college, you'll never be able to get back in. So I'm not going to do it. And we had small classes. So at Michigan State, my larger classes were 500 to 700 people. We had 15 to 20 people in our classes. And my degree is in policy, so we talked a lot about history and race and all of these things. And what I would find is the first week of class, everyone would be very polite and very particular about what they said. But I was just one black girl in a class of other people who had come from similar places and similar backgrounds. And after the first few weeks, they would say exactly how they felt. So this professor comes in the first day of class, and she off the bat makes comments. She said, you know what, I went and took my driver's license picture, and they asked me, did I want to be black or white? And I told them white because I heard terrible things about black. And everyone laughed. They said, yeah, you made the right decision. And I remember just sitting there like, all right, this is how we're going to do this. So midterms came. I went to her office to ask her a question. I had been writing my paper. I wanted to make sure I was going in the right direction. I asked her a couple questions. She goes over my paper, and then she just stopped. And she said, you know what, can I be honest with you? I said, please do. And to give some background, I had my daughter when I was 16. So at that time, I had a child. And she said, you know what? If I can just give you some advice, you should just go home now.
Whoa.
And I was so shocked that I didn't even have time to do a neck snap because I was just, I'm like, is she speaking Turkish right now? Because I don't know what she just said. And she said, you already have one child, so before you have any more kids and waste your time, you should just go home. And if you know who the father of your child is, you should just see if he will, marry you. At that time, I had been with my child's father for about 6 years. And she's like, if you know who he is. And she's like, don't waste any more money. At that time, I was on a full ride scholarship. And so she was just saying all these things to me that they didn't resonate with me at all. The person who you think you're speaking to is not me. But it was so huge to me because she had only spent a few months in America, and this is what she gathered about black women. And this is what the people around her reinforced. And I remember just walking out of that office numb. And so she was kind of like, any more questions? And I just kind of gathered my books, and I was just numb. And I had one black professor. I remember he was my 8 a.m. I walked into that class saying, I'm dropping this 8 a.m. But he was the only person who looked like me. So I was at that class early every week. And he said, what's wrong? At that time, I had started a nonprofit on campus, and so I built a relationship with the dean of the college. He told me, he said, you know what? Don't come to my class tomorrow. You go home, and you better write the best paper you ever wrote. He said, don't worry about anything else. I'll take care of it. And what ended up happening is that they revoked her green card, and she went back. But I just remember... And that was big. That was big to me that my dean thought enough to do that. And so what I tell students is two things. A, it was a relationship that I built, because if it was just a student that he didn't know, if it was just like, okay, that little black girl, but I don't really know her. So I always say, build relationships outside of your circle. Show people who you are, because maybe he didn't know another little black girl. I went from school being a breeze to being in an environment that was against me, and school was really hard. So if he would have just pulled my records, he might have said, why is she on the full ride? Freshman year was really hard for me, and so the things that she said to me made me second guess, like, maybe I should just go home. And so one thing that I thought about is how many people are enduring these things behind closed doors. And when you get to next semester and you realize so-and-so isn't here anymore, or so-and-so does just marry that man who may not be for them. Maybe he's not a bad man, but he's just not for them. So it brings me back to that support system. We have to be each other's support. We have to be there to listen and to remind each other that's not who you are, But I think that was the most blatant time in my life.
Wow, that is powerful. Well, I have to confess, right? If she would have said, do you have any more questions? I would have said something like, yeah, do you know Floyd Mayweather? Because he taught me how to bob and weave. I hope you got some skills because it's going down, right? Wow. And now you see why she's strong, right? So, fantastic testimony. Nadia.
Too many stories to tell about same thing. I was a teen mom, and counselors, they're supposed to help you get through school, tell you to go home, just get a job. I'm too hard-headed for all of that, so I did what I was supposed to do. But what I would say about the stereotype of being angry, which is where you started, I would say, yeah, I'm angry. I would say something a little bit more colorful, but my mother and my grandmother's on the stage. Yes, I'm angry. Justifiably so. If you walk with us just for a minute and we tell you the stories, many of them like this, many of them like the work that you do and the experiences that you've had, all of you have stories in here that have hurt you and caused harm and scars. It makes you angry. And we're taught that anger is a useless emotion.
Right.
It is not. It's anger that fueled me to finish school.
That's right.
When the woman told me to go home and get a job. Or when my assistant principal told us we acting like porch monkeys and put his hand in our face.
Wow.
Right? It's anger that makes you look at the fact that you're in a desegregation program in the 90s in Michigan. It's not Little Rock. It's Michigan. Yes, angry that hundreds and thousands of black women go missing and nobody comes to find them. I got this thing. We travel a lot in my job. One of my colleagues, I told you, white male, we would go travel, and after we get done with work, he'd be like, let's go get a beer. I don't drink beer. But no, I'm not going, because I would tell him, no, because they're going to have the National Guard and everybody else coming to look for you. Ain't nobody coming to look for me but my family. And half of them ain't going to be able to get here, but they're going to be walking. Like, no, I'm not going. I'm just going to go to my room because I got an agreement with my husband to come home alive. Like, no. Right? Yes, this system makes you angry, and if you're not angry, something's wrong with you. If you don't feel anything about what it means to live in a black woman's shoes, something's wrong. So I think it's justified. And so I know that there's tension around, like, strong black woman and angry black woman and sassy black woman, but all of those skills have helped us. All of them. There are times I've had to, excuse me, right? Like, that works. That's an effective tool to get somebody off of you. Right? It's effective. So I think we have to reclaim the narrative and say, yep, I'm angry. Now, how I deal with that, how I carry myself, whether or not, I live all the way into some of those stereotypes. Do I want you off my children and off of me? Yes, I do, and I'm going to make that known. I'm not going to be Midwest nice with you about messing with my children. I'm coming for you. I have 2 reasons I'm going to jail: civil rights movement or my children. So if they said anything else on the news, it's not true.
All right. Can I just say something really quickly?
Oh, absolutely.
I think that's a part of our wellness plan, too, though. If you're angry, you can be angry. You're grown. If you're sad, you can be sad. We have to suppress our emotions. And we wonder why we are dying at a young age or why we can't effectively communicate. I'm quiet because if I told you how I felt, if I told you what I was going through, then you think I'm crazy. And so I think that's a part of our wellness plan. Lately, if I'm upset, if I want to stay in bed and I feel a way and I don't even know why I feel that way, it's okay.
That's right.
But yes, and I see that we heavily put this emphasis on black women being whatever, angry, sassy. But I will say, being in the corporate world, I pay attention to other cultures, and I'm like, they just as angry, just as sad. Like, if you
we got the stereotype, though.
I've seen some things cut deep. I'm like, ooh. And it's just done with a really big smile, but I'm like, if you peel that back, it was a lot happening right there. So I refuse to take that. I refuse to say that it's just us that's like that. No, we all go through a wave of emotions, and God gave them to us for a reason.
That's right. Very good. Well, the time now is 8:03, and we have about a little less than 30 minutes, and we are going to open up a question and answer session. So we are now inviting members from the audience to ask questions. So here we go. Hello, Valerie. I'm wonderful. Can you stand, please? Okay.
I'm here tonight. I have two teenage black girls, 14 and 16. And
it's a challenge. Some of those challenges are the same challenges I had. Like, none of the boys look at me because they all like light-skinned girls and white girls with long hair. So this image, this identity that we all dealt with, it's painstaking as a parent. And I just want to get some feedback from the ladies of if you have, girls particularly, because women are more attached to our image than men are. And so just looking for some feedback. I do the best I can with encouraging them, telling them they're beautiful, telling them, baby, that ain't Beyonce's hair. Her hair is not like that. Her hair looks like yours. It's nappy. So I do the best I can, but I just wanted to get some feedback for image.
I will say really quickly, in my younger years, when I first started going to school, I went to Tri-Unity. I don't know if anyone knows Tri-Unity, but it was a world away from where I was. And I remember no boys liked me. I didn't look like anybody, and I didn't, at that time, kindergarten, first grade, I didn't understand how that affected me. But being older, I remember, so shout out to my mom, but they moved me from Tri-Unity to Dickinson. And I remember I was like, what is happening? Like, I was confused. And so then I went from being the really black girl to the really white girl. But then I remember under that, a couple of boys would be like, "Ooh, so and so said you cute" or whatever, and I remember it like it was yesterday. I didn't even know how to handle that. Like, me, I'm pretty, and I think what has to happen is you got to find a way to show your babies outside of West Michigan, outside of Grand Rapids. It does me wonders to just go to Detroit or Ohio, and a man just be like, "You so beautiful." You be like, "Thank you." But really, it's a place thing, and I think that we also have to just do that to our kids in general to show that you can find a place anywhere. You're not stuck here, and it's kind of a West Michigan mindset that when you're here for you born here and you die here. But just that experience outside of here, because unfortunately, they might not have a different experience in these boundaries, but somewhere else, and it's not even a sexual thing. Older men or older women, when you go outside of here, women would just be like, "Hey, gorgeous, hey, beautiful," and it's different. So that would be my advice.
If I can comment too, it's on. Well, I have a 26-year-old daughter, born and raised here. Now she lives in Charlotte, North Carolina, to your point. And she took a nice little journey, because I told her when she graduated from Central Michigan, you do not have, or coming back home is not an option. Keep it moving, girl. Keep it moving, because Western Michigan, it comes with challenges. It really does for our young black professionals. So she graduated, moved from Mount Pleasant, city of Detroit. She got her little footing. Mom had the safety net, but she got her little footing. Then she went to Dallas. Now she lives in Charlotte. But to your point, I think part of it is a place thing. Now, I do have a real quick question. To the dark-skinned sister, how many of you have been told you're pretty for a dark-skinned girl? Okay, all right. And because there, I guess, is a notion that the more European or closer to the European look, lighter, more fair, straighter hair, that's considered beautiful, pretty, gorgeous, it's more attractive. But then if you are on the darker scale, you're a little more ebony, you have that Afrocentric appeal, then you're not considered as pretty. But again, it's a notion. Back to your point, you have to continue to remind yourself and your daughters that they are beautiful within themselves. I see your hand. Yep.
Can I also respond? I also think you have to do, and I'm saying, you know, people always on panels and then they try to answer your question like they got it all together. I'm going to dispel that right now because I'm teaching my girls, right? I think you also have to be intentional with practical things, right? Like the pictures that they see in the house, the books that they read. Are they reading things that affirm who they are and what they look like just how they are? I even, with the little one, like right now she has a Black Girls Rock shirt on, but her first day of school, now I know the manufacturers didn't mean this for the shirt, but I took their narrative and changed it. It says Queen of Naps. I know what they meant by it. But I told her it was because her hair was nice and fluffy and big, and I put all these twists on it, and I let it fly, and I'm like, that's Queen of Naps. You're beautiful, right? Like, I think we have to do practical things like that. And although I agree, there's a special case in Grand Rapids in West Michigan. I'm not from here, so I don't mean to put y'all city down or anything like that, but it's real special. But it's true across the country, too, right? Those Clark's doll studies have been done since the 40s, and they've been replicated over and over and over again in Black girls. Every single time, don't choose themselves. They always say that they are bad and sassy and mean and that the white girl is pretty and she's pure. And we have to figure out a way. And we're socialized to be that way. And so really paying attention to the images that they see, but even, because some of this we get from our own community, watching those who are elevated in front of us around what's beautiful, and then we have to ask our girls, why is it that everybody that you say is beautiful looks this particular way? What are you going after there? And make them think about it, and make them be able to articulate and question how they are. My hair is natural underneath there. I had locks. I took them out when my 18-year-old was 7. She had locks because I had locks. I took mine out. She took hers out. Now, then she went a step further. She left me. She did a buzz cut and a high top fade. She like, I'm loving this thing, right? Like she's doing her own thing. But I think we have to model for our girls that dark is beautiful and light is beautiful and everything in between, and stringy curly hair is beautiful and kinky knotted up hair is beautiful. And it's not a sin to say nappy. Like people are like, don't say nappy. Like nappy is beautiful. I got a whole bunch of them up under here. It's beautiful.
All right. You want to add to that, Rebecca? No? Okay. We have another question.
I have a question. Well, first I'm going to say my name is Christina Elmore, and I'm a district court judge here, downtown Grand Rapids, so maybe I'm a powerful Black woman. But I'm also the mother of a 17-year-old young Black woman. And so I have a question. She's my baby. She's the only girl. I have 2 boys as well, but they're older, they're gone, but she's at home. But the question that I have, particularly for Nadia, because you have a daughter that's around the same age, my daughter's 17, is how do you combat if you even have this issue, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but the love and hip hop image, okay? Okay, well, you know, all the people, I'm always telling my daughter, you know that's not real, right? You know that's not the way to act right. But I wonder, how do you combat that in raising your Black daughters if you have that issue, and also with peers, and how it seems like, you know, the bitch and hoe and, you know, all this language that they have now, these rap lyrics, if they're listening to rap music. How do you deal with that in talking to your daughters and raising them?
Yeah, we dealt with that. Tough. What y'all talking about? And bougie.
All the reality TV raises my blood pressure. I don't even eat pork, so I'm not having high blood pressure from that. I'm having high blood pressure from reality TV. I would say that when my daughter, the 18-year-old, her name is Imani, and when she was younger, I just wouldn't let her watch it. Like, her friends would be able to watch it, but I'm like, you can't watch that in my house. Like, because I don't want you to believe that that's how, and I'm not talking about respectability politics, I really am not. I just don't want you to believe that that's how you're supposed to treat people, and I don't want you to believe that that's how somebody's supposed to treat you. But then there comes this age where they're going to watch it. They're going to listen. Now, my husband he's much more patient than me, God bless him. And so he would listen to hip-hop, and sing it with her and do all the things, because he's like, I got to know her language so I can help her decode it, so I can help her understand. And my job was to, like, turn on the whispers and the OJs, so she can listen to a real love song, right? Like, here's what a real love song looks like. There's no there's no A in a real love song, right? But I think the yin and yang and the partnership together helps. But I also think just if they're going to watch it, unpacking it. Like, are you cool with this woman, like, showing up in the restaurant and slinging her water on somebody? Like, is that how you want somebody to do you? Or is that what you're going to do to somebody else? And how are we supposed to be with one another? We had a conversation about how Black women support Black women. And most importantly for me, I'm always asking, okay, how is that tied to structural racism, that reality show there? And what you're supposed to feel about each other, right? Because we're always like, she thinks she's something, right? Like, and all of that behavior that some people watch it because they're trying to unwind from, they have difficult jobs, they have serious jobs, and they watch it because they're trying to unwind. Some people are looking at it because they are emulating. We had a whole conversation about the really high heel shoes, and I was telling my daughter, you know those hooker shoes, right? Those came from, like, I'm not talking about your shoes, sis. I'm not talking about your shoes. See? I don't hear you bringing. I'm talking about the platforms with the fur, and it's not about the judgment. I'm saying know the source. Like, who are you emulating, and why? Right? Which brings us to the topic of role models. Who are we watching? Who's in front of us? Who are the role models? And certainly, and maybe I don't want to take anything or any time away from the audience, but before we close, hopefully we can touch on, well, who are your role models? And moving forward, back to, daughters' role models, who are the role models, or who should they be today? So let's see if we have another question from the audience. Here we go.
Hi, everyone. My name's Lajane. I have a two-part question, especially because I work in media. And you guys don't all have to answer both parts, just maybe pick. The first part is, do you guys have any sort of retort when people use the expression crabs in a barrel? Because I always like to point out how crabs got in a barrel and who threw salt in the barrel and who turned the heat up in the barrel. So those are mine, but I'm just curious your thoughts. And then the second one, do you have any tools or specific examples of how you combat covert white fakeness in this area?
Well, if we could get one of you guys to answer the question, just if one of you can answer. Because I'm going to go to the back so we can, all right?
I'll tackle the second question. Being that we work at the YWCA, we get a lot of folks who want to donate their time and money and efforts, and I really appreciate our new CEO, Sharice Mitchell. She is a woman of color, and I appreciate the direction that she is wanting to take the YWCA. And being in West Michigan specifically, there are those donors who want to make themselves feel better by donating to all you poor Black women who are being abused. And she has taken a stance to say, let's use this as an education and a point to educate people. I'm going off the topic of domestic violence specifically, but letting them know, using it as a learning opportunity to say, you might think you're coming from a good place. You want to donate. You want to pour into this community, but this is how. I don't think I'm going to put it into the right words, but thinking of domestic violence as a person of color, as people of color issue, is where we can start the conversation. Domestic violence affects all areas of race, education, socioeconomic backgrounds. And so in a very subtle way, I know it doesn't answer your question specifically, but as far as where we work and coming from that way, that's the politically nice way to address the white fakeness.
For me, I would say personally, I think that this is general across the board. Just being honest with. So I was having a conversation about Colin Kaepernick, and are you supporting the NFL this season and all these things? And they said, the person told me, they said, you know what, boycotting the NFL because of Colin isn't going to do anything, because if other players stood up with him, they would just be replaced. And so saying there's always someone waiting in line to take their position, and it's nothing we can do about it. And so I feel, speaking specifically of this place, I have made decisions to sit things out, to not, when I feel like things aren't authentic, to say, I don't want to be a part of that. I'm not going to add my name to that, my energy to that, and knowing that there may always be someone willing to say, great, she doesn't want to do that, I'll do that. But just being really discerning of what is real, and that goes for whether it's a person of color or someone who is white, knowing what's real, knowing what's for you is for you, knowing that I'm just not going to be a part of some of these larger games, and if that does cause me to miss out, then that wasn't for me. And I think that as people of color, we get caught up here playing this game, and I love you, I'll support you. Oh, she's doing too good, I can't support her anymore. And we play all of these games, and that's all fakeness. So I think for me, it's just making a decision, not as much as possible, not being a part of that.
Okay, I'm going to take a question back here. Can you guys hear me? Okay, good. So we have another question.
I am a single mother. I have 3 children, 11, 10, and 2. My oldest girl, she's the 11-year-old, and my question is, how do you build confidence or how do you teach them or the importance of education when trying to balance work and raising and other children and helping to keep them active and keeping them in activities and, doing other things? How do you balance that?
Kristen, if you can take this one, being that you are a member of the board.
I think that is a daily struggle. My daughter just turned 13, and I will say for anyone who is raising a teenager, I salute you. I pray for you. Also, anyone who has decided to raise multiple teenagers, you're crazy. I don't know why you would do this again. But I think that, acknowledging that no parent is a perfect parent. Learn from the things that you did wrong and try to do better, but this is a process for both of you. Like, they're learning and you're learning, and one thing I've made a point to do with my daughter is when I mess up, acknowledge that I've messed up. Because I'm really quick to say when I told you that wasn't going to go right. So then to say, you know what, I was tripping, I'm sorry. But that balance, like, our kids need that balance from us. And so it's really hard. How do I provide and create balance? And so I'm kind of saying I'm right here with you trying to figure this out. But I'm also saying that I think we have to be really intentional about deciding what's important. And sometimes we're so busy just trying to keep up that the things that get the most of our time or the most of our attention aren't the things that we would say are the most important. So we have to take a moment and say, these 3 things are what I'm going to be really intentional about. And that might mean me missing some other things. And it's hard because those other things might be important as well, but when I've made a decision to say, I only have 5 more years with my daughter where she got to listen to me. And so looking back, what do I want those 5 years to be about for her? Be about for me. And so really trying to take time out and be strategic about that.
Thank you. We have one more question here.
Coming out of the generation where reading is fundamental, thinking about the ages of 5, 10, 15, and 20, what are the most important books that you want your daughters to have read, digested, and internalized? After the Bible. We can skip the Bible. That's a given. Y'all holy, so that's fine. So go.
Thank you.
I think Nadia will probably have the great answers for this. But I will say really quickly, when I was young, I read so many books that I totally didn't understand. I used to sneak into my mom's library, and so I read The Color Purple and The Bluest Eye, and my mama made me watch Oprah every day with her, so I used to be on Oprah's book club, and didn't know nothing. Like, now I'm like, oh my God. But those things, I'm not saying let your child read The Bluest Eye and things like that, but a lot of the craziness went over my head, but I got a lot of the culture and the depth, and I got something from Toni that I didn't see with my eyes every day. And I think that it's really important that our children read literature. It's great to find some literature that's relevant and that's, you know, a part of their culture, but to take them back a little bit, and it's okay to read things that you don't understand and have to go learn about it. It's okay as well.
I have so I was going through Layla's bookshelf the other day, and I realized that most of the books she has are about Black people. And so I think that you have to put books in front of your kids where they can see themselves being superheroes and dancing and singing. There's one particular book that she has called I Like Myself. And there's a bunch of books about Black girls with puffy ponytails and My Hair, I Don't Care, or something like that. It's like Big Hair, Don't Care, right? Like all of these kinds of books when they're little. And then as they get older, I try to put books in front of them about our journey in this country, our journey before this country, the women that have been a part of our story, like Queen Ty, but also Rosa Parks. And I believe our son was 3 when we took him to see Amistad, right? We never hid our story and told him, like, well, he's not old enough for that. No, he's always old enough for the truth, right? And so I would say we have a lot of books, and what's fun as a parent for me is when, and this happened just a couple weeks ago, you have all these books on your bookshelf, and your kids walk past them every single day, and they just think, that's just ridiculous, my parents reading that. And then they go off somewhere, and then they come back, and they were like, I found this book. And it's 12 Years a Slave, and I was going to read it. I'm like, the book has been on the shelf since before you were born. Go pick up the book, right? Like, but it's their self-discovery, because you give them the messages, and then they see the books, but then they go and discover it themselves, and then they own it. But I think that stories about us, slave narratives, I got a bunch of those, inventors, educators, voyagers, like all of the unusual stories that you hear about the people that aren't mainstream, that aren't sanitized, and made okay to be our heroes, I try to encourage them to read about. And I also encourage them to go and talk to people like my grandmother, who will tell them the real story about what her experience and their place in that story, because that's part of their story.
I would just second that, like you said about Amistad and the slave narratives, especially for the students who are in school, because my kids are still learning the same history that we learn, and knowing that if they're going to learn real history, it's going to come from me and what they read. And so intentionally putting things like that in front of them, not forcing on them, but introducing that and letting them know there's another side to what your teacher is telling you in class, a side that they're not teaching you.
All right, I have Janessa Smith from the library here that would like to share some additional information with the audience.
When you guys brought up books, I had to stand up because I'm a librarian, and I just want to tell you, bring your daughters to the library. Please, please bring your daughters to the library. The legacy that my mother left for me was she was in poverty. She didn't go to college right away. She had a bunch of children, but she brought me to the library every week and let me pick out 10 books to read And so I read voraciously as a child. And that led to me becoming a librarian today. In this building, my mother used to bring me in the 80s to read books. And I just want to encourage you guys to do the same things with your children. Over there on the wall, we pointed out, there are books. Those are all Black girl books that we keep in our collection. We have several Black female librarians here who are working hard to connect to the community and specifically to have resources that are available here for Black girls and boys in our community. So I want to just ask you guys, your tax dollars are paying for these things. Please use your library. And I just want to point out, Miley Diaz is a girl, I don't know if you guys have heard of her. She does 1,000 books for Black girls. She's a beautiful young lady, and she has a list of 1,000 books that she recommends for her peers. And my favorite book on that list is by Rita Williams Garcia. It's called One Crazy Summer. It's for 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. It's over there on that table. And it's about the Black Panther Party movement and how it relates to us in America. So, all right, thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so do we have any other questions from the audience? Okay, well, it's 8:30, and what I'm going to do is ask our panelists to tell us who, in your closing remarks, I want you to identify who your role model was or is, so you can use either past or current state in your closing remarks. So we want to know or hear from you who your role model was or is in your closing remarks. So we're going to give you a couple minutes to think about it. And when you're ready, you can go.
I'm going to take it personally, and I'd say absolutely my grandmother is and will always be my role model. She, single mom of 8 children, worked in fields her whole life, and she had a very quiet presence about her that as I grew older, I realized was her strength. She loved her kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, great-great-grandkids with everything in her. And, you know, she physically, this small, quiet woman, just taught me that, you know, love above everything, love for your family, love for the people around you, that love that she had for everybody is what I hope to carry on and pass along to my kids. And there's a lot I could say about her, but just the person that she was, I strive to be half the person that she was.
My mama is my best friend, but I would say her and my grandmother were my role models. And my grandmother didn't complete school past the 7th grade because she had to come home, she had to work. She always made a way. I learned business from her. So she had probably the least schooling out of all the adults that I looked up to, but was the smartest and practical. You know, you meet somebody and they give you like this big answer and you're like, okay, but how do I use that? Like, she always had a plan. And one thing that I took from her is that she was like this really strong woman, you know. She was a no-nonsense woman, but at the same time she was so sweet. And so right in front of me, she played out that juxtaposition of I'm strong, but I can also forgive, I can also love. And I used to say, Granny, why would you let them do that and then you're just nice to them? You know, I would get angry. And she would just say, because it's okay. And so, you know, when she left here, she left us last year, and when she left here, not only did she leave wisdom, but she left assets. And that stood out to me as well, because those things matter too. You know, I don't just have stories, but I have what all of her hard work amounted to. which includes those stories and that love. But I just really want us to get to a place where when we leave our people, we leave them better than they were before. We don't leave a burden on them. They're better than they were before, and the generation after them can be better. And she never sat me down and talked to me about that. She showed me that.
As half my family is in the first two rows. No, I grew up watching three people before me, and that's my big brother. And what I took from him, what he would tell me unequivocally, is to listen. And he'd say, you got 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you got to listen, and to live on purpose. Don't live chasing money or position. Live doing the thing that you're supposed to be doing with your life. I learned from my mother, who's my other role model, not to give up, to persevere. And that no matter what trial life brings you, you can get through it. Just dust yourself off, get on back up. Don't hold a grudge, which is, I'm still working on that part. But it's amazing to me, her capacity to let stuff go and not hold a grudge. I don't even understand it just yet. And then my grandmother. So we have this family joke that if we all in the line to get into heaven, and my grandmother's in front of us, and she gets turned away, we all leaving. Ain't no way. We don't have a chance. My grandmother is the epitome of a godly woman. Her ability to forgive and serve and be with people in their bereavement, and to stretch something. I remember this time I was a teen mom, and our son was out of milk, and I was like, okay, how are we going to get some milk? And I remember her friend coming over saying, she needs some milk for her cornbread or something. And I was like, okay, Grandma, that math don't add up. Like, if we give it a milk, then the baby ain't going to have the milk. How we going to do this? Grandma said, girl, it's going to be all right. And I'm like, no, it's not going to be all right. He's going to be hungry soon. And it was all right. It was always all right. My grandma took me to church. She took me to mission with all her elder friends. And that's where I would hang out as a kid, just listening to elderly, strong Black women with coded stories that now that I look back, I'm like, oh, that's what I was talking about. Right? And as my grandmother gets older and her body gets weaker, her mind is incredible, and she is forthright about saying that her life has been good, and it's been good because of us. And she raised everybody. She only birthed 3 children, but she raised everybody, brothers and sisters' kids, and brothers and sisters, and they kids, and kids on the block, and kids from the church. And she was always serving somebody. And if she could get up and do some stuff, she still get up. She's sewing pants and teaching them how to make homemade ice cream and all kinds of things. And so what I take from her life is to learn how to forgive. What I take from their life is to learn how to let go and to never take my eye off God, no matter how bad it gets.
Talking about, is this on? Okay, we were talking about how important it was to pass the torch. And in each of your closing remarks, you identified your role model, which was a member of your family who passed the torch of wisdom, knowledge, courage, strength. And in so many ways, oh, how beautiful. In so many ways, even though our moms and grandmothers, they didn't have a degree in accounting, but they sure knew how to stretch a dime into a dollar, right? No, they didn't go to culinary art school, but they sure could cook up a meal. They had another child, little addition to the family. Don't worry about it. We just gonna add another potato to the pot, right? Navigators. they knew how to get through. And I believe it was because of their spirituality and their faith in the higher, okay? So they knew how to pray. They weren't afraid to pray. They held on to their faith because they knew they were going to make it through. So, yeah, I didn't birth more than 3 children, but I'm raising them all. Don't know how, but I know it's going to happen. So through all that, these women, moms, grandmothers, they were strong. They passed the torch on, and guess what we're going to do? We're going to pass the torch next. So they paid it forward, and it's going to keep on paying forward, and it's going to keep on paying forward because we're going to continue to invest in our daughters, all right? So we can be a strong collective unit, and it doesn't matter when it comes to that whole spectrum of beauty in terms of color. It doesn't matter which end you fall in. It doesn't matter. We're going to come together and we're going to continue to be strong because we're going to continue to pay it forward to each and every one of us in this community and others. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming out and spending time with us